Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Today host. Thank you for tuning in tonight, along with my co-host, Mr. Ken Kashuba.
Good evening, Dale.
How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing just fine for a Monday.
For a Monday, yeah. Well, folks, we've been having here. We're both in Indiana. We've been having great weather here in Indiana, but I think it's going to start getting cold. They're talking about 30-degree mornings here coming on us. So,
and that's in your end of town. I'm glad I'm not in Fort Wayne. It's still going to be about 50 something in Indianapolis.
Is it really? Yeah, I'm a couple hours northeast of Ken here in Indiana. So we'll survive. We'll survive. It kind of happens this way every year, quite honestly.
You have that Minnesota influence up there, you know.
Well, Ken, tonight is broadcast number 316, and you've been on board for 174 of those. So we keep notching it up every week, don't we?
It's called plugging away, Dale. Plugging away.
It's called plugging away. That's right. That's for sure. Well, something I want to play here for everyone. Marengo Mike put together a tribute to Charlie Kirk. Is that what you call it?
I think that's what it would be called, a tribute.
A memorial or a tribute?
Tribute memorial, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something, whatever you want to call it. But I think Marengo Mike did a fantastic job. You know, and I didn't know Marengo Mike could actually sing. This is really going to be interesting here. So
I won't disclose how all that happens, Dale. But
all right, that's right. Ken is in charge of Marengo Mike. So in all honesty, we want to make that plain to everyone.
You want to have truth in reporting? Is that the case?
That's right. That's right. So we're going to play this memorial or tribute to Charlie Kirk that Marengo Mike put together for us. So here we go.
The streets are cracked, the air is gray. The world forgot the words to pray. But I see sparks faint and small in the shadows, they still call. A whisper grows, it finds the air. A single flame who sends a prayer. Be the lantern in the void, light the dark, don't avoid. Even when the winds are cold, hold the fire, don't let it fold. Be the lantern, be the guide. Hope's not gone, God's always there.
Welcome to another Marengo Mike's Corner. I wanted to dedicate this corner to Charlie Kirk, a supporter and friend of Convention of States. His focus on the youth of our country and many of the concerns they have fall under the perspectives of COS. His focus on the younger generations and their acceptance and eagerness to move forward in bringing America to greater heights will renew faith and bring a new energy to not only TPA, but organizations like the Convention of States that look to align our government with the vision our forefathers had. The work Charlie started will go on. Thank you, and until next time, this is Marengo Mike saying bye-bye for now.
The towers lean, the rivers dry. The sky is low, it hides the wide. not gone where he resides, where he resides.
Excellent job, my man.
Thank you. I hope everybody heard that okay. I can post the lyrics to that at some point too, if people didn't quite get all the lyrics.
Yeah, I think I was very moved when I first heard that. That appears in our newsletter, by the way, that is just now out, right, Ken?
Yeah, that came out Saturday, I believe it was. So yeah.
So every newsletter has a Marengo Mike's Corner, and we always like to try and play those that video on our broadcast whenever we can too. So once again, great job. For those that may not know by now, that Ken is Marengo Mike. So Ken does the Marengo Mike character, and quite a story behind how Marengo Mike got developed. We won't even go into that right now, but
it's a whole new segment.
That's a whole segment. Yes, it is. Yes. Well, Ken, I want to jump now into our first segment, and we've been doing this for some weeks now. It's called the In Focus segment, and in this segment, we bring on 2 or 3 guests. Generally people that are involved in convention estates one way or another, but not always. But anyway, we try to bring on 2 or 3 guests, and we just each individually talk about what our focus is in the world right now, or in the news, or whatever happens to be on our mind, or what we're focusing on. And we just spend some time talking about what that is for each one of us. And we have found that the discussion has been very, very good. Generally, each person is focusing on something different, which I found very interesting, Ken, when we first started doing this. So let's get to it. Now, Ken and I, we've decided that we're going to take a huge risk tonight. We're going to have 3 female guests on. So no telling what might happen here, Ken. So are you ready to go here?
I am. Let's bring them on and see how we fare.
Okay. Well, here's probably the one that'll give us the hardest time, and that's Debbie Stewart. Hi, Debbie.
Oh, I've got so much to say to you about that comment about all 3 of us women, but I'm going to hold it for another day because I don't want to put everybody through that.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. Yes.
But it'll be best show ever. Forward.
And following right in Debbie's footsteps is this lady from Ohio that always gives us a hard time, Ken, every time we have her on. But we've been able to make it so far, and that's Diana Tullis. Hi, Diana. You're muted. You're muted, Diana. And I didn't do it on purpose. She's got to figure out how. There she is.
I thought we had that fixed. So it's a pleasure to give you a hard time, although that wasn't a great start, but I will step it up here. So good to be here, guys. And Debbie.
Yes.
I might mention to everyone that we just came from our annual summit, Convention of States Summit, which was held in Indianapolis, and Diana was awarded a challenge coin, Convention of States challenge coin. That's the highest individual honor award that is given to by Convention of States. So congratulations, Diana. I just want to make sure I mention that.
I appreciate that. And I especially appreciate that you helped me get there, Dale. So it was an honor to find that out. I appreciate it.
I had a little something to do about it. Yes. I had, it was a hard road. I'll tell you, it was a hard sell, but no, I'm just kidding.
There were 2, I found out. So that's good.
Yeah. There's more than one. Good. Well, our final guest is new to Convention of States, or COS today, I should say. Miss Deanna Beckett, Regional Director for the Wild West region. Am I right, Deanna?
You are correct. And
Okay.
no, I'm not new to COS. This
No,
is a long
you're
road.
not. How long you been in COS, by the way?
Volunteering, I believe, a good solid 10 years. And then with the national staff, I have to calculate 4.5 years.
Okay. All right. Well, we're about the same. I think I came in about 2014, 15, somewhere along those lines. So.
Yep.
Very quickly, the states that are in your region, very quickly.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado.
Okay. All right. The Wild West. Okay. Well, folks, this is the In Focus segment, and this is where we each one take a little time and talk about what is on our mind, what our focus is, I should say, in the world today. And Debbie, I'm going to start with you, and why don't you lead us off? What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, so I've been paying a little more attention to the whole digital ID thing that's going on. It's kind of taking off in certain places of the world. We here in the United States called it a national ID card. That's been brought up just about every decade for the last several decades, and they've tried to push it through, and we have fought it. But there are more and more countries around the world that are beginning to either already have digital ID or are starting it or are planning on it.
Now, is this an AI-based program or software? How?
Well, it's interesting. It's going to be like an app on your phone. This is just kind of talking about what the UK is going to do, but it's going to be an app on your phone. It will be digital. It'll keep track of your personal information, but they want to merge the digital IDs with AI, with your medical records, and they want it all to converge together. That's kind of like the long-term plan.
Oh boy.
And it's very interesting because the people who are kind of heading this up are people like Tony Blair, who is head of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. You've got Larry Ellison. He's the executive at Oracle. He's really pushing this whole thing with AI, government IDs. Basically, they're saying that the reason for this is because they want to be able to control immigration. Okay, that's what they're saying, the initial, and to reduce fraud. Okay, but what could end up happening is the government could have total control, know everything you're doing, massive surveillance. The privacy risks are amazingly bad. I mean, just in the last 2 years, the UK's had 2 major breaches of their system where medical records were let go from private citizens, health records. Some of the other things in private information were just released to the public through these cyber breaches. But now they want to include all of our information in there.
I can't imagine what could possibly go wrong with something, a system like that. Nothing at all. Right.
And so really, I've been keeping an eye on it, but this week, I think it was actually last week, the UK came out and said, we are going to make this mandatory. So you will not be able to have a job here in the UK unless you have a digital ID. So, and they're saying that, well, if you have a digital ID, there'll be a thing on there that says whether you're a citizen or not. And if you're not, then you can't get the job. That's kind of how they're using this. But they've been trying, there's this global governance group that's been trying to push this digital ID, or what we call here, the national ID card here. So they've got all of our information under an umbrella. And so right now, his name is Keir Starmer. He's the British Prime Minister.
Right.
And he has his group of people, and he came out and said, this is what I'm saying to you. You will not get a job here unless you have a digital ID. You will not be able to work. Now, the way this works is, for the UK, is in order for this to get approved, 3 things have to happen. It has to pass through Parliament. It has to get the royal assent, or the royal family has to approve it. And then they have something called related causes must be formally commenced through some kind of a commencement program. And then the plan is like August of 2029, it would go into effect. So basically a little less than 4 years. Now, right now, countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, they are all either in the process of or already have implemented this. They've had some issues with that, the privacy issues for people. They want to centralize our finances, our health, and our genomic data, which means they want to know what your DNA data is. That can be very scary. If you think about what happened in World War II with the Jewish people, right? If they know what race you are or what your ethnic background is, they could actually target that. So these are all some things that could happen down the road. There's people in the UK that are fighting this very, very hard. They're going around with signs saying, you know, Big Brother is watching you. Digital ID should be a no, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Parliament, how it works with the House of Lords and the House of Commons. And then if it passes there again, couple more steps there. But
well, I'd really like for you to come back and tell us how far this is going here in this country, or what progress is being made here in this country. You know, if it's going in Europe, if it's going to be implemented in Europe, you know, it'll probably come here after that, or maybe even sooner. But
yes.
And you know, there's always been a push in this country for a voter ID, some sort of a identification.
Yes.
So,
yeah, that national ID card has been pushed quite a bit, usually from the left. The right doesn't like that because that's too much privacy being given over.
Yeah.
This Oracle's guy, Larry Ellison, and Tony Blair have gotten together. And it's interesting, Tony Blair's son owns a company that's linked to digital ID. And so his son would get involved with AI in bringing this. And then they want AI to kind of drive the whole thing, which to me could be even scarier because you don't even have like a human actually doing it. Yeah. It's going to be called the Brit card.
Brit card.
The Brit card, yeah. So, yeah, that's what's going on.
All right. Good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Diana, what's on your mind?
Well, right now it's digital ID and how dystopian that sounds. So you know, tonight I thought I would bring kind of a story about where I've been spending what little spare time I have after I take care of the family and homeschool and do my COS duties. I have a son who homeschools. He is 16. My other kids are full-fledged adults, all fine Americans. And Michael, in that vein, had asked me if I would consider starting a Turning Point chapter for him. So this was months ago, like last winter maybe. And in the spring, we talked it out. I talked to some people in the homeschool community. There were some issues with, where we would go and how it would look. And is the group even going to get big enough? And the day I wanted kind of interfered with other things going on. And I was really struggling because these kids are kind of from all over the place. And I wasn't as inspired until I joined the board of an organization this summer, an organization called Empower You, which is you guys have had Mike Mercier on, and he works with Empower You here in Cincinnati, and they do free classes on pretty much any topic. It's a conservative lean for sure, but a lot of history, a lot of art, pop culture, but nice, fun, historical, really, really great organizations.
I just exchanged emails with Michael.
Did you?
We're gonna be having him on again.
Okay.
Pretty soon. But,
he's a kind of a communications media type person. He's excellent. So I get to work closely with him, and that's probably how I ended up on the board to begin with. I got to know him, and they needed a board member. And anyhow, I in my conversations with that current board about my time, I mentioned, well, I'm going to really need to do this Turning Point chapter, and it's not going to be, I have a hard time squeezing it into my busy schedule. So that's coming with me. You know, whatever I do, I've got that on my plate, and it is new and kind of raw, and I need to work it out. And the managing board member, Dan is his name, Reginald is his name, said, well, why don't you do it do a Turning Point chapter under Empower You? And I don't even know why I thought it through, because it was a phenomenal idea. He is super connected, way more connected than I am, to the political goings on. I mean, I kind of tapped in because of COS, but not like he is. He's a businessman and has been doing Empower You for 15 years. So he's gotten to know a heck of a lot of people, and he's super likable. So I said, yes, of course. And in that planning is when we lost Charlie Kirk, and we had opened it up. There's no school, right? Because my son's homeschooled. So this
I was going to say a chapter's got to be connected to a school or some organization.
Yeah.
Is that what?
When we met with the rep, she said that there were options of becoming what's called a hub, so a Turning Point hub. And really with high school, they're calling that Club America, actually. That was a new branding that they had come up with to distinguish between the college groups and the high school groups.
Okay.
We had kind of decided we would kind of stick with Turning Point for a while and would maybe transition into that name, because nobody would have known what the heck, what that was. Club America didn't have it. It's pretty. It just wasn't. It hadn't arrived, right? And
Okay.
We weren't willing to forge through that being just a brand new chapter, really. So, but we are actually, by their standards, we're considered an activism hub, because we're just attached to a region, and we did have to name a region. So I chose Greater Cincinnati, which is daunting if you think that we literally just opened it up to any high school or across the entire, 3-4 counties. So, but we did it, and then it didn't seem as daunting until we lost Charlie Kirk. And then I before our first meeting, which was last week, I literally, woke up one morning and thought, I'm not sure this is safe. We could be making ourselves. We went on radio stations. We pushed it out all over the place. And what we could have, I don't know, Antifa could show up. I have no idea. Like, I literally have no idea. Maybe nobody, maybe not even any high schoolers show up. I literally have no idea. So I did lose a lot of sleep last week. I really did. And we do have police presence because it seems like the right thing to do. And we're grateful for that. But we do meet where the Empower You studio is. So we meet at 5:00, and we are about 2 hours in advance of the regularly scheduled kind of more adult, classes that are hosted by Empower You.
Now, have you had a meeting yet?
We had one. We had 70. And we had several adults included in that number. We probably had 40 some children, 40 to 50, and some adults, and then some littles that kind of came along because it was the first meeting. But we had a nice crowd. And I had a speaker there who I believe you've also had on the show, Adam Bowling from Americans for Prosperity spoke.
Oh, yeah.
I had him on my list of people to use at some point, and we actually are having some trouble. We did for that meeting. I couldn't locate like a Turning Point a Turning Point rep to come in. And he said, I'll do the first one. So he did the first one, and we're still working out, we kind of talked at them that night, but in time I'd like to move the chairs and make it so that I'm sitting among them and we have a guest and we address a topic that would be typical for a Turning Point chapter. It might be Second Amendment. It might be the First Amendment. It could be big government, sus, as they say. I think they used to say something else, and he cleaned it up a little bit. But the election, we're a little behind the 8 ball to talk about election because we have one coming up here in Ohio. But the importance of it and how many people don't do it. Maybe we get somebody from the Board of Elections in sometime.
Now tell me, have you made connection with the national organization, Turning Point organization?
Yeah, we did get lucky here. We had, finally, I did locate somebody who is a field rep who will be joining us on Thursday in Cincinnati at our location. And she is specific to colleges, though. So you see for sure in several colleges in the area. She really wouldn't typically be the person that would make their way to a high school chapter meeting. curiously enough, the woman that was doing that in our area, she has moved on. So they were in motion on getting somebody onboarded for our region, and that person is they were actually onboarding that person when they lost Charlie Kirk.
So you couldn't do that in your spare time either?
Actually, it's funny you say that, because it did occur. Like I said, I could jump. If I'm going to do all this, I could, but there's travel involved. If I didn't have a homeschooler that I had to actually, give some time to, I feel bad enough that he has to beg, borrow, and steal for my time.
Yeah.
But we're doing it, and I'm excited. I'll tell you what. At one point, I said, first of all, if these kids, if there's nothing they learn other than, there's so much, but was that if they're looking through life and their decisions and their voting and who they support and issues they support through the lens of like this limited government perspective, that's what's limited government, self-governance, God-given rights, and that it's up to the government to help protect those rights and very little else. And that's all they learn. That would be a tremendous success for me. And in another conversation I had, I sort of said, these kids are the choir, right? Their parents have raised them to be who they are. But it dawned on me that some kids, students, seniors in high school may leave the nest and have certain things that they believe, but maybe they don't have a strong understanding of why their parents tell them big government is bad and we're Republicans, and convention of states is a really great thing to do, and the states should take advantage, and federalism and all those things. But if they don't have a solid understanding, though, of the principles, then they're the ones that can go to college and be turned and influenced the wrong way. So it's important. It's not just for to drive home the message, but it's to like, instill it and make sure that they can't be touched when they move away, that the ideology sticks and they bring friends along with them. And frankly, and I'll close with this, because we're a hub and students are coming from all over, I envision them bringing friends to the event and going back to their schools, maybe that don't have Turning Point chapters, and being inspired by us to bring it out to the next school. So all good things. It's not a forum for convention of states. That's not what it is. I want to make that clear. I haven't done that, and I don't think I will. But it's certainly Charlie Kirk being an apologist for Christian values and American values and good citizenship. It all aligns really, really well. And he being, I don't know that we discussed it yet, but he was an endorser, a full-fledged endorser of Convention of States.
He sure was.
So it is a great fit for me. And I wish I didn't have to sleep, because it's been a lot. But we're pulling it off so far, and I'm surviving, and my son is surviving. and I think we'll see some fruit here from this effort. So
great. Well, Ken, Debbie and Diana are really hogging a lot of the time here tonight, but that's kind of the way they are,
That's okay. I got a short one, but let's let Deanna get her.
Yeah, well, let's let Deanna get in here before we run out of time. Deanna, what's on your mind, Deanna?
Well, I don't have any particular news focus. I do want to thank Debbie for being so articulate and really a deep dive and understanding that topic. It really brought that to life a little bit more. And thank you, Diana, for giving us your time and your talent and your lack of sleep. We were talking when we roomed together at Summit, we were talking about how we can be this big influence, and we don't have to be a big influence. We can just be who we are, and our children are watching. They have watched, and where they go from here is where our pride is, and they'll continue to watch us. But my focus is not necessarily a news article, but how I approach the news. So I don't get wrapped up in particular news. I mean, there are things that really tick me off. I kind of get down.
No kidding, really.
Yeah, down in the dumps, or, dug in and just, rah, 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 rah. I don't yell at the TV anymore, so that's a good thing. But I try to look at news items, whether they're, from the one end of the spectrum to the other, and think, all right, what about this is true? So like you mentioned, Ken, finding truth in reporting. And there is a lot of stuff out there that's not very truthful. And so when I look at news items, I mean, they can be a variety of things. I try to find or try to seek the lighter side and look for rising above the news and having a better attitude. Because once you start getting into the news and starting listening, and my attitude goes down in the dumps. But it's important to stay up to date with current events. I mean, staying informed about events around the country, around the globe, allows us to engage in meaningful conversations. I mean, without knowing what's going on, without reading little bits about Oracle. I mean, I saw little bits of it and went, oh, what's this about? So I'm glad you were able to clarify that, Debbie, for us. But one of the things I try to do, I should say 100% of the time, is before watching news or before opening my phone, is asking for discernment in prayer and looking at it from a little different angle, and, kind of looking on it in a bird's eye view, going, all right, pick it apart. What's best, and finding the high road, finding that positive. I find that what I feed my mind sometimes comes out in my mouth and my attitude. We've had that, of course. One of the verses that I like to go back to is Proverbs 23:7, and that is, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. It's not focused just on he, since we've got, all ladies on tonight, but for as we think, that's who we are. So we can't control our circumstances. We can't control what's going on around us, but we can control our response to those circumstances. And it goes back to servant leadership. Who can we trust, and what is our reaction? Those are kind of the two things that come out to me.
Right.
And then listening to too much news media is like feeding weed seeds into my garden. And sometimes I have to yank out those weeds after a time because they choke out the good fruit in my life. And so I like to look at the media and news. I've been saying the word news, but the world events in a different perspective, and try to encourage people to do that. And, shifting back into COS and looking at kind of a lighter side as we, get ready. We're in district season right now. And as we're getting ready for January to kick off legislative sessions all over our region, one of the things many of you had experience with was and we're continuing to have the training, is the Article 5 apologetics. And that has just lifted our lids in our region. It gives me a more positive perspective instead of trudging into legislative session, knowing the obstacles that we have that we're going to run into. And that just gives me a lighter feeling and a more positive outlook. And I think it is nationwide, and I hope it is for our region as well.
Good. Have you had your strategy meeting yet? Do you have a strategy meeting planned?
For our region, not necessarily.
No.
Our states do their own strategies, and then
right.
I kind of accumulate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I work with a volunteer assistant, and we've been hashing things out and looking at things and just kind of picking out different pieces.
Okay.
But as for legislative strategy, we work with Rita Peters directly for a lot of our states. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, you talk about the media. The gentleman that Diana mentioned when she was talking, Michael Mercier. We've had him on. He's a media he says he's not an expert, but he's spent 30 years on this and analyzing the media. And he reported to us on one of his appearances on COS today how the media, I mean, it's just, they're such a powerful force in our country. There's no doubt about that. And the media used to determine the facts first about a particular story and then create a narrative from those facts. Well, what has happened over the many years is so many of these media outlets create their narrative first, generally based on political suasions. They create their narrative first, and then they find the facts to support that narrative. And it's hard for us as consumers of the news to discern what's the truth and what's not the truth. So I understand your frustration with it. I understand it very well, and I think he really brought it home to us as to what's happening with our media. So very good, Deanna. Well, Ken, you and I don't have much time left. I mean,
that's okay. I've got very short.
You expected it. You expected it.
You know, we wanted to see what would happen when we brought 3 females on, and we've got the results. So
we got the results. That's
okay.
right.
We can take back seat. We understand that sometimes that's where we belong, in the back seat. But yeah, you know, I appreciate Deanna's approach. I find sometimes it is very easy to get hung up on media. And originally, when we first started discussing what we were going to talk about tonight, I was thinking media, but I thought, you know, it's really old news. They're not changing their positions any. We have a few reporters that are turning around and trying to weasel their way, write a book and make it sound like they, you know, like they weren't responsible for saying something that they said months ago and is on video somewhere. But I decided to, you know, leave that behind. But I appreciate Deanna bringing in a different light to it and kind of asking for the guidance from God alone and what we could get from being in the scriptures every day to kind of guide us and not get caught up in all that sauce. But I'm gonna turn just a little bit different focus on what I was thinking about. You know, after deciding that the media was not where I wanted to go, and it's really more on a couple of things that President Trump has done just recently that I think is good. One of them, I think, the first one is the fact that he got the big drug firm Pfizer to turn around and say they're going to lower their prices here in the United States to match more of what happens in Europe. Where was Pfizer, you know, 4 or 5 years ago on this?
How did this happen?
That's what I'd like to know. But like I said, when, you know, suddenly he announces that Pfizer is going to drop their prices, and it looks like suddenly they're best buds. It's like, you know, what did it take? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that discussion.
Yeah.
But because I've just never seen them get pushed aside by anybody. So that was one thing I thought that he did that I think everybody can rejoice a little bit in. I mean, you know, some of us are a little older and relying on some of that stuff. But the other part I heard, which again I don't see will be as easy to push through, and it's not something that's through yet. But I saw that he's arguing now for a nationwide voter ID resolution. So you know, I think some of the things that really bother us as conservatives or conservative thinkers anyway is the fact that some of this stuff is just so logical, and you can't approach this with logic because you see the other side and what they do, and there's absolutely no logic to it. And I just say to myself, you know, what's it going to take? But so those are 2 things I think that President Trump has done just recently, or is pushing for, at least on the second one. And I'm happy to see. I guess you can call it a little bit more winning, but that's something I would think that no matter what side of the aisle you're on or where you're at, wouldn't you want to celebrate the fact that a drug price maybe that you have to take every month is the price is being lowered? I mean, they'll fight them on it, I guess, or they'll put up a big, there'll be people walking through the streets with their signs telling us to, leave our drug prices alone.
I'm sure
that's where I'm leaving this tonight, Dale. I'll let you have the segment.
All right. Well, I'm really focused on this situation in Gaza with this 20-point peace plan. I don't know. Something in me says this is not going to work, and because when you stop and think about it now, Hamas, if they give up the hostages, they don't have anything. That's the only weapon that they really have left is the hostages. And if they give up those hostages, they don't have anything left. I quite honestly, I'm afraid the whole thing's gonna fall apart. However, there are a lot of pieces involved in this now with all the other countries around that have signed on to this. That's something that's new. That's I think pretty strong. But I just don't see Hamas giving up those hostages without getting some major consolation in this whole process. Part of me does say, okay, Israel, clean them out. Just go in and clean them out. Let's get this over with, and just clean it out and hopefully save the hostages. But then another part of me wants to make sure that this gets every chance to work. So I don't know. I'm really torn. I'm checking every day. Actually, Deanna, I watch the news all day long, looking for information on this particular topic. So
you got a lot of weeds in your garden.
That's right. Yes.
Don't let it get you down. That's the biggest thing, is don't let it bury you.
But I do anymore. That's news and football. That's about all I watch anymore on television. So anyway. Well, folks, that we're out of time for this segment. I want to thank you all very, very much for participating in this. I really like this segment, and we're going to continue doing it every week. When we'll be getting 2 or 3 different guests, hopefully every week. So, like I said, I think it's been really great, and I want to thank each one of you for participating tonight. Anybody, Ken, have we got any viewer comments or questions? Anything that we need to recognize?
Not at this time. No, everybody I think is just mesmerized by our striking conversation and engaging.
Survival skills.
Yeah.
All right.
I think maybe they're a little hesitant to actually type in and say we need more of the female stuff. So I think they're just a little hesitant to do that.
You think they're hesitant on that? Okay.
Well, and we won't be able to argue that when we see the numbers jump up, Dale.
All right. All right. Once again, Debbie, Diana, Deanna, thank you very much for participating tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Let me see if I can get them all off of here without crashing here. So, all right. Good segment. Enjoyed that. Very good. Well, Ken, why don't you take a minute or two here and tell us about that QR code up there? Okay.
Yeah, that QR code right up there. Yeah, that's easy to say for you to say maybe. That's our support QR code. Basically, it's just there for you to take your smartphone out, capture that QR code, put in your name and your email address. And for that, you will be given access to a platform where other people that are supporting what we do here and the programming, just a way to show their support. And it is also a way where we look to get input about things that you might like to see us continue or change or whatever. It's an open forum there. So get your smartphone out, hit the QR code and put in your name and email address, and we'll welcome you aboard.
All right. All right. Good deal. Well, our main segment, of course, I guess the In Focus, the first segment's the main segment, but our other feature segment is a series that we're starting on RFK and the Make America Healthy Again program. Robert F. Kennedy and Make America Healthy Again. And we discovered that one of our COS leaders, Dr. Dan Stock, is involved in an organization that is advising the RFK group in our government. And he anyway, we're gonna do the first episode of this series. I recorded that with Dan here a while back. We're gonna run that recording here very shortly. But Dan is like I said, he's very, very much involved in this, and he's gonna kind of, in this first segment, he's gonna kind of set the ground as to what's been done, what has been happening over the years, and what they're trying to change. So and obviously we've already talked about he had for segment 2 he had a whole outline plan, and we're already revising it because of Trump RX and what you talked about, Ken, with the prices. So we're going to be revising that some. So, and we'll be recording that a little later this week. So let's go with my interview with Dan Stock on RFK and the MAHA movement. Okay?
Sounds good.
Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Today host. Well, today we're going to bring to you episode 1 of RFK and Make America Healthy Again. And this series is going to be brought to you by our own Dr. Dan Stock, one of our COS leaders here in Indiana. And I think you're really going to like that. So without further ado, let me bring on Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dale. How are you doing?
Good. Glad you could join us, and very much appreciate your willingness to do this series. Please, let's begin here. Tell everybody your association with RFK and your disclaimer that you wanted to say at the very beginning. Okay?
Sure. So I am a senior fellow of the Independent Medical Alliance, which is a group of doctors who refuse to have any conflicts of interest in anything we're making decisions on. We have been working with the Department of Health and Human Services with advice and insight as to what goes on in the healthcare system and what kinds of things we think might be helpful. I'd like everybody to know from the get-go that I am not speaking for the Independent Medical Alliance or anybody in Health and Human Services, the CDC, or any division thereof. The opinions tonight are my own and mine only, but they are based upon my experiences in the work that the Independent Medical Alliance has been doing with RFK, and what I've seen coming out of the news is this has been progressing as he reforms the Health and Human Services Department.
All right. Very good. Well, he has certainly been in the news. There's no doubt about that, and which has led to our wanting to do this series. And I'm just so happy. I just happened to stumble across your involvement in this. I wasn't aware of this until very, very recently. So anyway, I'm so glad that you're willing to do this. So let's jump right into this, Dan. And we've got some headings, some banners. Why don't you start out with the HHS rules that you wanted to talk about?
So I think what's very important is people try and understand what reforms are happening and the speed with which they're happening. They understand how things got bad in the first place. Because unless you know exactly how the thing has been corrupted, it's really hard to understand, hey, is it being fixed and how is it being fixed?
Right.
So I kind of like people to know where this whole Health and Human Services thing started going off the rails. And it's actually happened through several different definitions where Congress gave power to the executive branch to do things any way it wanted. Those of us in Convention of States will be very sensitive to the idea that Congress keeps giving away its power. And then when that concentrated power gets in the hands of a few executives who happen to have conflicts of interest, all kinds of very silly rules can get made up.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best examples was the FDA declaring this category of chemicals called generally recognized as safe. This was actually a group of chemicals that anybody who wanted to give you a chemical could actually go to the FDA and say, hey, we think this should be generally recognized as safe, or GRAS, GRAS. And that would then give the FDA permission to say, yes, we are going to recognize that as generally recognized as safe. And once we recognize that, we're allowed to let you put it into human beings without requiring any research to tell us whether or not it's safe or not. And we would, and we won't even review this. So, like, for instance, most of the food dyes have been put in under the idea that they're generally recognized as safe.
And now who determines they're generally recognized as safe?
Well, the FDA does.
The FDA, okay.
Yeah, and once it decides something is generally recognized as safe, they now give themselves permission to let anybody put it in your products without requiring any research on whether it's safe. It was a category that they supposedly designed so that we could have supplements, things that are found in food, and that people could sell these naturally occurring chemicals. But they have since then actually been extending it to things that are completely absent in nature that a human being would consume, like petroleum food dyes. And so this was the first kind of evident step of, wow, it's really off the rail. We're just going to hand to industry the power to say, we want to use this chemical and we don't want it to be reviewed for safety. And then, of course, that took off.
Okay, all right.
One of the other major things that's made it very, very corrupting at Health and Human Services was that there's no cooling off period on any of the agencies within Health and Human Services. So, for instance, you're allowed to go work for the FDA, where you're actually not paid very well, to be honest with you, when you're a lower level FDA employee. And then if you're really good to the pharmaceutical industry, you could actually leave and go take a job with, say, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, being the vice president of paperclip accounting, becoming much better paid. And then after that, you could go back and now work in the higher echelons of the FDA again, overseeing the company that had paid you a great deal of money as the secretary of paperclip accounting. And this kind of back and forth has happened quite regularly. As a matter of fact, the former director of the Health of Human Services was a guy that I named Scott Gottlieb, who initially worked, I believe, at Eli Lilly here in Indiana, then went to become the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and is now on the board of Pfizer, making much more money than he did when he was Secretary of Health and Human Services.
And most people would not be aware of this shuffling back and forth, would they? I mean, these are people that are kind of below the radar that you don't hear much about or anything. But
most people wouldn't know Scott Gottlieb's name if they, if I stapled it on their forehead, they would not know who Scott Gottlieb was.
But you've ingrained here this connection between industry and the government that is definitely there. I mean, it's obvious, it is.
As a matter of fact, that kind of leads us back into one of the other things that started polluting this, which was there are advisory councils that are made up of supposed experts. And the justification for getting these experts was, well, they're all the guys who are doing the research. Now, this research is all being funded by pharma or has been licensed by pharma very early on. And so effectively, you're taking people in who have enormous conflicts of interest. So, for instance, if you looked at the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, that's the committee that advises the head of the CDC on what we should do with vaccines. Until just recently, it was entirely made up of people who were doing research for, had been given grants for, worked on boards for pharmaceutical device manufacturers. As a matter of fact, this had become so commonplace that despite the fact they were required to file statements of conflict of interest, many of them had not filed any such statement in the last 10 years. And many of the conflict of interest statements were incomplete, where they didn't declare all of the things that they had. So, for instance, the same is true for the advisory committee on vaccines for the FDA. So that these things were actually just completely filled with people who had terrible conflicts of interest. And this power structure of how things were being set up very quickly leads to the hiring of what I like to call useful ignoramuses. And I don't want people to think of ignoramus as just a nasty word that Dan likes to throw out there. I want people to think of this as a physiologic process. You have to understand that our brain has the ability to ignore things. It has to do that so we can get through life. It has to do that so we can make very rapid decisions sometimes. So this neurologic skill, though, can go off the rails. Some people that get so good at it, they become frankly psychotic, all right? But then there are some people that there's a level of psychosis we accept. And if you're a guy who is really good at ignorance, and you are particularly good at ignoring things that benefit the pharmaceutical industry, then you will be promoted and brought into the FDA and the CDC and the Health and Human Services. Now you're not a lying mustache twirling villain. Baha, I'm going to cash in big. You're a guy who's probably cashing in kind of small, but because you're really good at psychosis, you're useful to them. And you become the guy who is running this show. As a matter of fact, one of the best examples of this, there was a doctor by the name of Offit who actually went on and said, well, you know, you can't use saline as a placebo for vaccine because even saline or saltwater solution will be physiologically active if I give you an entire liter of it. So he's comparing a liter of salt water to a half a milliliter that we would give somebody for a shot, saying that this is, I mean, like couldn't even keep volume in the equation right. It's a statement so stupid that unless you had half your brain removed, that would never make sense to you unless you have practiced ignorance to the point where it does make sense to you. And this is a lot of what got hired in here.
Wow.
And as I like to call these, the useful narcissistic ignoramus, you know, oh, good, I must be important. Somebody asked me to be on the ACIP committee. You know, and then you go in there and now you ignore the fact that, hey, you know, I've been on the board of so-and-so pharmaceutical for a while. And, oh, they make a product that, oh, well, you know, this does make sense now. And next thing you know, it actually leads to the abandonment of scientific method. So a good example of this is almost every vaccine on the market in the United States today. So if you're a drug, you have to have a placebo-controlled, randomized, double-blinded trial. As a matter of fact, you have to have 2 of them that the FDA says is of good enough quality for us to just make a decision on this. Well, the FDA just decided what we're going to do is say, you know, giving somebody like aluminum salts, that's a placebo. Even though it has effects on immune system function, causes cellular injury and lots of inflammation, but we're going to accept that as a placebo. Or we'll say you can compare your vaccine to another vaccine that has never actually been proven safe and effective in a placebo-controlled randomized blinded trial. So they actually started making the quality of scientific method just get worse and worse to the point where the number of variables being controlled was almost none of them. Everything's changing at one time. And really no scientific method comes out of this. And effectively, they abandon scientific method. They use science like words. You know, we talk about things like adjuvant and, you know, scientifically confusing sounds, but the method of, hey, control all these variables, change just one variable, see what the outcomes are, measure all the different variables, make sure none of them are changing, that's been abandoned. And it's been abandoned mostly by people who say, well, that's good enough science because I'm a useful narcissistic ignoramus. And it is sad to see that then let that system percolate for 60 years, which is what it's been doing. And very quickly, you can end up with an enormous system that is approving agents with almost no evidence of either safety or efficacy. And you now have a group of people who are so psychotic, they're very comfortable going in front of a camera and a microphone and saying, see, science, science. As the example of Dr. Offit. And they can say it with a straight face and very convincingly, they really believe this makes sense because they've been drinking Kool-Aid long enough that Kool-Aid is food to them.
And you think, Dan, do you truly think this has been going on for 60 years?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's certainly gotten worse over the 60 years. But, you know, a good example of this is, you know, the herbicide glyphosate. So glyphosate actually kills off all bacteria in plants. All right, it's toxic to all of them. They don't make this enzyme that you need, or really they have an enzyme that glyphosate blocks that the rest of us don't have. Well, the FDA said, oh, well, we're not going to require you to test that to see if it's safe in humans because humans don't have that enzyme. Even though our guts are lined with the bacteria that are going to be wiped out by this sucker, and it doesn't wipe them all out equally, it wipes out the good ones better than the bad ones, but completely ignoring the fact that, you know, we have bacteria living in us that we need, they completely ignored this and said, no, we just don't need to study it. It's safe. Without ever doing what scientific method would do, would say, okay, well, we need to take a group of humans, expose them to the levels they would get when this herbicide is used on their food, another group who will not be exposed to the herbicide at the levels they would get if they ate this food the way the manufacturer wants, to test it to see if it actually works right. And glyphosate is right now sprayed on most of your grains. They get harvest after they're sprayed with glyphosate. You get to eat that. And now you understand how, wow, that makes no sense to go off and use a chemical that would do that. Why didn't anybody think to test it? And I tell them, well, guys, you have to remember the kind of person who has been selected to wield this power is being selected because he's effectively fairly psychotic. And they look very serious when they tell you we've done good science, because that to them is good science. It's not very good scientific method. But this selection process where we concentrated the power in the hands of something like Health and Human Services has actually led to the breeding of a group of bureaucrats who work this way. Between that and the fact that they don't have cooling off periods, that you can leave, go back to work for the industry you regulate, and then come back and regulate that company again, you know, you end up with a lot of people who are just terribly conflicted, and it has altered their sensorium so that they don't see the same reality the rest of us do. And they don't have to be mustache twirling villains who are all getting rich on this. Many of them aren't. Many of them are making decent wages, but they're not, you know, multi-billionaires or anything like that. But, you know, it's nice to have power. You know, a lot of guys like that feeling. And hey, here's some, you're usefully ignorant. Go evaluate this vaccine.
So what's RFK trying to do? Is he trying to weed out these people, or?
So, and this is exactly, and the specific details I know we're going to take on in future lectures, but what RFK has effectively said is, we are going to do great scientific method. It's going to be the best available. It's going to be adjusted for all the variables that can be adjusted for, and adjusted in a way that makes scientific sense. And then, after we do that, we are going to have a public debate that anybody can see. And it's going to be debated not just by the people who feel this side of the argument. We want the other side as well, because that is scientific method, that we adjust for all known variables, and then we publicly debate. Not a private debate, not a debate where we only let one side of the argument in the room, all right? But a public debate where everybody is allowed to come to it. In fact, just recently on one of the ACEP meetings, they had a debate about the DNA contamination of the modified RNA shots. And then after they presented their evidence, they turned to Pfizer, who was there, and said, we now give you the floor. Would you like to comment on what we've just presented? And they chose not to comment, but they were given their opportunity to come into the debate and fight back. And this is the brilliance of what RFK is, John. It's exactly the same method that Charlie Kirk would have used, that we're going to have debates. They're going to be open. They're going to be public. And we're not just going to debate the people who agree with us. We're going to debate the people who don't agree with us.
What are these debates going to look like? Are these going to be, do you think these are going to be televised, or are they, what are they going to look like? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, in fact, they've already been happening. As I said, the new Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices has all of its meetings are in public. And while they may meet in private to get their data together that they think is important, they then have a public meeting. And at that public meeting, they let other groups, the American Medical Association, Pfizer, Moderna, they're allowed to come to that, and they're allowed to testify and speak at this. And so while the working group may come up with some data that it wants debated and presented, but then they actually allow the other side to do so. In fact, I would encourage people, you can go online and just search for the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. And there's video links to all of them where you can watch it go on. You can actually watch them present what they're concerned about, then go to get some official at the FDA and say, hey, we think this research should have been done, please comment. Then they go to the manufacturer and say, you can comment. They go to the American Medical Association and say, you can comment. And they allow everybody to hear the arguments that's being made by both sides. That way, America can form its own opinion, and the power is not concentrated in a backroom decision. And it's not a debate which is being skewed. I can tell you previously, when ACIP meetings would occur, they would say, oh, yes, we're going to let people from the FDA come. And of course, who would come? But the same people who had the same conflicts that the people on ACIP did.
Right.
The manufacturer would come. The American Medical Association would come, but they're highly financed by the manufacturer. And so everybody showing up at the debate was from one side. Well, now it's going the other side. We have an ACIP committee, which is actually comprised of people who have no conflicts of interest. And yet when they come in with their concerns, they invite the other side to come in and rebut their concerns. And these are happening in public spaces where anybody can watch it. And that's actually where the best place to see the information come down is. It is actually scientific method in action, watching this debate occur.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, Dan, we're about at our time limit here. Kind of summarize this first episode and just briefly tell us what the next episode is going to be about.
So in this first episode, what I tell people we're doing is actually getting it so people can see how things got wrong at Health and Human Services, seeing how the intellectual capacities got corrupted, how the people who are in it got corrupted, seeing how Congress contributed to this by concentrating power to make it happen. And then we can start to understand what we're doing through RFK to try and undo the executive branch corruption that's in there in subsequent episodes. Eventually, this is going to require work in the legislature to have the final fix, but we can at least see what Mr. Trump and Secretary Kennedy have started to do to undo the corruption of the executive branch overseeing Health and Human Services right now. Okay.
And now I see in episode 2, you're going to talk about RFK and the food industry. Is that what that's going to be about?
Yeah, that'll be the first thing to say, hey, how did he go about trying to get things better so that when we eat stuff, it's stuff that can scientifically be said probably won't kill you.
Okay, excellent. Well, Dan, thank you so much for doing this. I hope our viewers are finding this very helpful. I certainly have. I didn't realize at all that this was going on over all these years. And most people don't. I would guess.
Dale, I'm very grateful if you're asking to be on here, because the first step in having a people participate in their government is having them understand how their government works. As a guy who's been in the healthcare profession for a long period of time and knows that very few people know how the healthcare system works, it's very good to have people educated who are willing to spend the time and actually learn, hey, what's been going on here, so that they can participate in the fixing of it.
All right, Dan, once again, thank you very much. and look forward to episode 2.
Thanks very much for having me, Dale.
Thank you. Well, folks, that wraps us up on episode 1 of RFK and Make America Healthy Again. I hope you found this very informative. I certainly did. And we're looking forward to episode 2 here very soon. So that's it for COS today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. So, Ken, did you follow all that?
Dale, what I followed is, if it hasn't been education and health, then what other categories am I going to lump into this? I've been around for at least the 60 years, more so. I've put in a few more years than the 60 at this point, and I guess what boggles my mind, as I'm sure it did yours as you were talking with Dan, is the fact that all this has been going on, and we're just starting to wake up to it now.
Let me tell you, I thought about this for a long time, and I thought up of an analogy to help understand this, and I bounced this off of Dan, and he thought it was a good analogy. And here's the analogy very, very quickly. Let's just say our government decided they want to decide what is the best pickup truck on the American market. What's the best pickup truck on the American market? So they appoint this guy in Health and Human Services or somewhere in the government to conduct this study. Okay. Well, so he does. It so happens that Ford Motor Company has done a study of their own, and he thinks that's a good enough study right there. Says even though we in the government have all the data we need to do our own study, we think the Ford study is the very best study and scientific study. So we're just going to accept the Ford Motor Company scientific study. Okay. Now it so happens that the Ford F-150 pickup truck is, they determined scientifically, as the best pickup truck on the market. Okay. And it turns out that with a little further investigation, that the gentleman that was in charge of this study happened to work for Ford in the past and came back to the government from Ford and has received research grants from Ford to design engines for them, and also owns Ford stock. So that's what's been going on.
Yeah. Well, I guess
going on for 60 years.
It's a great analogy, and again, I guess the surprise is the fact that, as you said, a lot of these people, they're not getting rich off of this. But it's again, I think when I look at everything that we certainly, at least from a convention of states standpoint, look at is that it's power is addictive. Power is just addictive, and you don't have to. Although there are some people that are getting amazingly rich, power is just addictive, and people have a hard time giving it up once they get it. And boy, I look at those years prior to the 60 that Dan's talking about, and I'm sure it may go back a little further than 60. But I look at those. And I won't give away right now how many more years it was, but. I look at those years as a small capsule of time when I really lived free. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's move on here. Let's, Maringo Mike's got a little reminder for us. Let's play that and make sure we get this in here. Okay.
All right. Yep.
Maringo Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell, so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
All right. Good reminder there. Good reminder.
Yep.
Well, Ken, I've been wanting to do this little tidbit here that I've got recorded, and I'm going to play. You remember, what has it been, about 3 years ago now, that the abortion Roe versus Wade was overturned, right, by the
Right.
Supreme Court.
Mhm.
They didn't ban abortions. They just returned it to the states, returned that decision to be made to the states. Well, I did a little update on what does it look like now in our country now that this has been done. It's been about 3 years in the making now, 3 years that this has been going on. And so I've kind of put together a little summary here of how it looks in our country. I wish I could have had a few more graphics here than what I was able to come up with, but hopefully you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. And we'll come back here once it's done here, once I complete this, and we'll kind of sum it up here. But this is kind of an abortion update in our country. Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Today host. I wanted to give you an update on where we stand in our country with regard to abortion. If you recall, let me bring up a little PowerPoint that I put together here, and which may help explain this to you. But if you recall, in 2022, our Supreme Court overturned the Roe versus Wade decision. And as a result, abortion law and policy shifted from federal protection to state level decision making. Now, this change has produced a patchwork of laws across the country, with each state determining the degree of restriction or protection. And I thought it would be very interesting to kind of look. If you look at a map of the country, I wish I had individual maps that I could have drawn from this map, but I don't have that. So you'll have to bear with me on this. But this is color coded, give you an idea of the different state laws that apply to abortion in different states within our country. You'll see some that are very similar. They're color coded the same, but you'll see, and as you see, there's a mixed variety of colors here. So let's delve into each one of these categories. We've got them in different categories, and I think you'll find this very interesting. So let's go with the first one here. This is states where there is basically a total or near total abortion ban. There's about a dozen states that prohibit almost all abortions. Some, of course, have exceptions, like life of the mother sometimes, rape, incest, okay? But many of these states had trigger laws, so they activated immediately after the Dobbs decision. Now, we also have then a group of states. Again, I wish I could have broken this map down. It would have been very helpful to identify those states for you. But these are the states where they have a 6-week abortion ban. In other words, heartbeat bills. So several states restrict abortions once the fetal cardiac activity is detected, or heartbeat. Typically around 6 weeks of the pregnancy, and I guess that's debatable. But this is often challenged in courts, and the enforcement will vary. But this is one group of states where they center around the 6-week, the heartbeat bill. Okay. Now we have another set of states where they're called states with mid-gestational abortion limits. So Florida, for example, in Florida, there's a 15-week ban. Okay. Arizona, 15-week limit. Others considering similar restrictions. Reflects trend toward kind of the middle of the ground bans here on this type of abortion ban here. Then there are states where there's strong abortion protections. Okay, and this is like California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Oregon, and others. The rights are codified in state law or constitution. Some states designate themselves as abortion sanctuary states. Now, the final group here is the group where there's really ongoing litigation. In other words, they haven't come to a conclusion yet. Montana, Iowa, North Carolina, and others are kind of in legal flux right now. Court rulings and ballot measures apply. Abortion remains accessible but uncertain in many of these states. So that's kind of where we are with regard to abortion law in the United States. And once again, since the decision in 2022, the federal protection has been lifted, and now it's up to the states to determine their abortion restrictions, abortion laws. And as you can see, we've got a mix of different laws. So the post-Roe environment in the United States reveals a deeply divided nation on the issue of abortion. As you know, some states enforce a near total ban, others just the opposite. So it's going to be interesting, I think, to see what becomes of these bans and these different limitations on abortion, because it's going to be interesting to see what happens with regard to future elections and what impact this is going to have. But I thought I would bring to you just a brief update on where we stood with regard to abortion. So hope you enjoyed that update. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good update, Dale. Yep.
Yeah. I thought I've been wanting to do that for some time. So yeah, it's kind of all over the board. But you know, that was the intent, to return those kind of decisions to the states. So yeah, as you can see, there various states are deciding in different ways. So.
Yep. So, and no matter what side you come down on that, if you are seeking an abortion, you can find a way to get one. Yeah, you may have to get in a car and go to the next state or hop in a plane, and but that's not unusual to get medical treatment nowadays. I mean, I know people that have had cancer and have gone to a cancer institute, 3 states away because it had good care there. So. I don't get where these people get off saying, oh, this has to be one way or the other. It's my way or the highway, and the way a lot of those people speak. And again, it's not representative of the country we live. I mean, that's the beauty of our country, is the fact that, we can agree to disagree, but, there are the freedom carries that stick both ways. So,
yeah. All right. Well, what we try to do, something else we try to do now is every week we try to include a Dave's Daily Dose, which is presented to us by one of our contributors up in Minnesota, David Punt. And once again, David sent me 4 or 5 of them that he does, and I got to pick one of them out. We'll never get to play all of them. I don't know how this guy does this.
We might have to have a Dave's Daily Dose week, Dale, and get caught up.
We've talked about, haven't we, about doing a whole segment on these things.
Yeah,
number of segments maybe. But anyway, this one is good. This has to do with Hamas, and so let's take a listen to Dave's Daily Dose here.
Uh-oh. The Charlie Kirk haters have come to my neighborhood. Well, my neighborhood Facebook page. And I know this gal. not a friend, more an arm's length acquaintance. She posted that you don't see Charlie Kirk's racism because your own gets in the way. Nice. Nothing like the smell of insulting the neighbors first thing in the morning. Here's where she went off the rails. And no, I don't expect her to read this. This diatribe is for your eyes only. This is Dave's Daily Dose on BrokenRoadRadio.com. I'm David Allen Punt. Sandy Cortex, otherwise known as AOC, specified recently that Charlie Kirk was a racist, and she had proof. And then she played the video in which Charlie is talking to a black kid who asked why Charlie thought the Civil Rights Act was a bad idea. And didn't he realize that that's how blacks got to vote? Charlie weighed in. Correction, blacks got to vote in this country when the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was passed, just after the Civil War. Nearly 100 years later, the Civil Rights Act was passed, prohibiting discrimination in a whole raft of activities and businesses for a whole raft of identities. The original act included rephrasing of the rights of everyone to be able to vote here, and everyone had all the colors, creeds, shapes, sizes, heights, and weight imaginable. And then it went a little further, or subsequent court decisions did. And as Charlie explained in that video, led the way to men playing in women's sports, men undressing in women's bathrooms, and that's what he thought was not at all that well thought out. When I saw that post on my Facebook page, my first reaction was to ask this former neighbor for more information. But the missus stopped me, convinced me that if this gal was willing to call me names based on so little evidence, she probably wouldn't read or respond to anything else I had to say. I've developed a short back and forth with a total stranger, also on Facebook, who insists that he's seen videos to show Charlie to be a stone-cold racist. I've asked him if he's willing to share. Let me see him. At first he said, check any news broadcast. Then he suggested I check with Turning Point USA. Then he said he'd have to look around. Maybe he's thinking that leaping to that first conclusion was a leap too far. Or maybe he's found the damning video, and it doesn't say what he'd been told it said. Or he's decided to cancel me from his Facebook feed. You decide. I'm David Allen Punt.
Well, folks, did you catch the Hamas theme there in that Dave's Daily Dose?
Not sure I did.
That's not the one. This is my fault. I'm going to take the responsibility for that.
I'm glad somebody is.
This is the original one that I wanted Ken to load up, and I changed it. Did you get the email where I changed it to a different one?
Yeah, I did, and I downloaded the one that you said that's what it said.
Okay. I
enjoyed it. I always enjoy a good DDD episode, and that was
it's a good one. It was a good one. It's my fault. Okay, we'll move on. I hope everyone.
We'll have one for you next week, folks.
Oh, there'll be. I'll have another set of 4 or 5 to choose from by then. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start wrapping things up tonight, Ken. Coming up next Monday, the 13th, we'll have episode 2, part 2 of our RFK, Make America Healthy Again, with Dan Stock. I'm going to be recording Dan a little later this week, so we'll have that ready to go. So that'll be on next Monday, okay? Also want to remind everybody that if you have any comments or questions about our broadcast, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Well, Ken, any comments or questions from our viewers that we need to address tonight?
Not tonight, Dale. No, nothing to battle over, or no agreement segments there. Kind of quiet tonight, but then I'm sure that once some of these recordings are viewed again, we may get more action. So,
I just want to let everybody know. Apparently, we are back on TikTok.
yes, we are.
And we were. Well, we won't go into that. But it's been quite a few. I don't know how many months was it now that had been off.
I think at least 3 or 4 that I can recall. I mean, the best estimate there. But
so I'm anxious to see how this is going to impact us. I will say our views did pick up in September. Not to the level that we want them to be at, but certainly an improvement over August. So we're hopefully we're going to be going back in the right direction, and I'm just hoping that with TikTok back on board, that we'll be able to get back into the level where we want to be. Hopefully.
yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice to get the TikTok followers back again. I'm sure that they'll be happy to see us return.
I hope so.
Yep.
And now, am I right? TikTok has been purchased now by Oracle.
That's what I understand. Yes, that's what I understand. Or Oracle and maybe some others involved in that, but I think Oracle's the main.
Okay.
Main,
All right.
Participant there. Yeah.
All right, Ken. Let's bring Marengo Mike on here to close us out this evening. Once again, everyone, thank you very, very much for tuning in to us tonight, and we appreciate your following us and watching us. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We enjoy bringing this to you, and I hopefully you've enjoyed our broadcast. So here's Marengo Mike to close us out this evening, Ken.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.